So again, welcome everyone. Today's session is covering the reporting tool within ARM. Try to avoid the statistical side of things and give just a nice general overview of the reporting capabilities. We'll go through the list of available reports, the variety of things you can generate within ARM. We'll talk about the report options and saving them into a report set, and go through some common options that are beneficial and useful for general use. They find themselves over and over again being useful for whatever you might be trying to create in ARM. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to ARM. I have a general trial here. It's from our tutorial study list. Nothing particularly special here, just something that has a lot of information filled in so we can see the types of reports and things we can generate. So within any trial or protocol that you may have, we can generate a report from the File menu. About halfway down on the screen, we have Print Reports. So we have a dialog here for our reporting functionality. I'm going to start on the left with our list of available reports. So one of the things I like to stress about reporting is we've got a lot of options. You can see there's a pretty long list here of the various things we can generate in ARM. And I kind of classify the reports we have into two different types. We have maybe what you would classically think of a report as simply bringing together the information that is entered into this trial. We have something like the site description report. And if I click on the name here, I'll do maybe the standard form of that. I've got a preview here on the right that will help us just kind of see kind of roughly what the report will look like. And in this case, we're just simply bringing together all the information that we've documented about the trial into one consolidated report. So pretty much any section of a trial has a report that goes along with that. Something like your trial map will show the image of your trial map right there in a report, the list of trial treatments. So we have kind of that classical sense of just things that are in our trial that we want to have put nice and neat into something that we can report to others. The other type of report that maybe gets hidden a little bit because it's not quite as obvious being part of the print reports function is there are a variety of tools. They're essentially different functions that we can utilize related to performing a trial. And like I said, nice to point them out in a presentation like this because they may otherwise go somewhat hidden. So going through some of those just from top to bottom, really, we have a data collection report, which would be kind of a very simple, basic way to set up, handwritten assessment notes. We just are giving the assessment header to be able to jot down what type of assessment was performed, and then the plots so we can write down the assessments that we're taking. Very basic. Of course, it's going to require us to hand enter the data back in to ARM, but certainly can be a tool if the handwritten notes is kind of what we're already using. At least we can bring that structure to our system there. And the nice thing that goes alongside this data collection report is the data verification. So after you have transcribed the information that you collected into ARM's software, you can generate your verification report. And it's the exact same structure, the same information put in here, but we are printing out the data that is in this trial. So I could print this out and lay it on my desk right next to my handwritten notes from my data collection report. And that way I can visually verify that there was no transcription errors, that everything has been entered into the software the exact same way that I recorded it in the first place. So just a handy process if you are handwriting notes to make sure there is not an error when transcribing from the handwritten information into the software. Another tool that we have, I have a large category of labeling. So there's a little plus sign right next to the word label. We can expand to see the list of labels we can generate in ARM. I won't spend a lot of time on this process. We do have a couple tutorial videos on our website that can step through this process for creating labels. But it's nice to point out that ARM can indeed generate a variety of different types of labels, whether it's a particular container of your formulated product or whatever you may need to label. We have a variety of formats and pieces of information related to your treatments. There's also plot labels, whether they include the randomization, so you would know where you're going to spray, or just simple plot labels, things like that, something for a seed tray, variety of functions and things within there. Again, we won't spend too much time on that. Here it knows I don't even have any seed treatments in this study, so what am I doing trying to make a seed tray? Probably the same thing here. Seed packets, again, this trial doesn't really have any of those, and also harvest labels. So again, check out our website if you're curious about how to kind of work with labels, but those are available here in the print reports, how we can generate those. Going down here, another tool that we have is just using ARM's ability to calculate product amounts based on our treatments and the applications that we plan. So this product amount totals specifically is a totaling up of the different products that we have in our treatment list. So it can be very useful for ordering product to make sure we have enough on hand to actually perform the trials that we are planning. There is, in addition to the product amount totals underneath the trial list, if I have a protocol open, we have the same idea with a protocol product amount totals, which is useful from the sponsor standpoint of making sure you send enough product for the trials that you're performing. Similar idea there, just in the different type of file. And kind of going along with that, there's also the spray seeding plan. So this provides us a calculation specific to each treatment of how much product we need to measure out to perform the applications that we have defined in our study. So this is another really nice tool type of report that really is helpful for actually performing the trial itself, not just waiting till after the fact, but being able to have ARM kind of side by side all season with us. So I've got my plot numbers where that particular treatment will be applied at, in addition to the amount that I measure up. There's also usually a table at the bottom that is that product amount totals, which can be turned on and off in your report options. That is a common tool, I suppose, kind of right in the middle between a tool and just documenting what we have would be some of our summary reports. So these are, taking the assessments, all of our assessment columns that we have with our data and doing something with them. So the AOV means table report is kind of the primary statistical analysis that ARM provides. And like I said at the beginning, we won't spend much time on statistics here. That'll be next week's session where we'll dive into all of the nuance there of what's happening. But just to point out, this group of summary reports all are related to the assessments themselves. The assessment data summary it is just a nice listing of the raw data that we've recorded. The only type of analysis at all is just a simple mean that gets printed to. Again, a variety of other analyses for different situations that are available to us, all in this summary group. Finishing the rest of this list, the tour report, that is just a nice listing of the trial treatments. You can choose whatever columns of information that you would want to have about your treatments here on this report. You have the randomization essentially here as well to see where across your trial did that treatment exist. And then there's an open spot for notes. So this might be useful as a handout perhaps for a visit to the trial. And then we saw the trial map, trial treatments are all different outputs like study rules. That's one as well where we just are showing the rules editor, essentially, the list of rules in our report. I did skip over this one, the status report. I'll just zoom out. This is looking in the assessment editor. You'll notice there is no data. It's simply giving a list of your assessment header. So all of the assessments, you can see the status as far as are they performed or not. You would know by seeing the rating date filled in and some of the interval details. And of course, if some of those pieces of information were empty, that'd be a sign they haven't been performed yet. So this is a sense of what you have in your assessment editor. How far have we made it throughout the season? We skipped over a couple of these. The schedule, again, just if you've used the schedule tasks function within a trial, you can plan out the different applications and assessment timings, different things that need to be done in a trial. You can create a schedule for those within the ARM trial. And this report will just give a list of those tasks and the progress therein of those. I don't have any in this trial, so there's not a whole lot to see here. There's also signs, kind of ties into the idea of labels a little bit, but just much larger content here. You can see just giving details of each treatment in a very large fashion. So when printed out, they could go on a sign, something a little bit larger in size. And last but not least would be this map, really just a text version of the trial map report that really is basically a picture of the trial map editor. Here is a simpler version just of text. Shows your replicate and block as well as your plot numbers and treatment numbers. You don't quite have the same visualization, but sometimes this is handy just to show the randomization in your trial. And one more quick look at this list of protocol reports. They're all kind of duplicates of the variety of the trial ones we looked at. Again, they only work if you have a protocol open instead of having a trial open like I do right now, but they're very similar. What data headers do I have in the assessment section planned out, the protocol description, all of kind of the same things we saw in a trial, just the protocol version of them. Okay, so that's the list of reports, kind of a quick rundown of what we have to choose from, really. Once we want to make a selection, because really each of these reports are really components. If we want, we can include more than one of these reports put together into one master document or output that we'd want to create. So when I have want to make a selection of these reports to put together, I can select it in the list. And now in the middle here, I have a section called Report Set. And I'm simply going to add this selected trial treatments report to this list in the middle. And this is going to be the list of components that I want to include together in one full report. So maybe I want to have my trial treatments, and then let's generate the site description. I can just select the next report and add it to the list. And we're just generating a longer and longer report, essentially. And then maybe I'll do my status report. I don't need the data. I'm just going to show my assessment headers or something. I can double click on this and it'll do the same thing as the add. It gives me a list of the components I want in my report. So each one of these report components, when we select it, either in the report set list up above, or when we have it selected over here on the left, each report has a variety of options that allow us to control what gets generated or how it's presented in the report. So those load in the middle of the screen here. In this case, we have the trial treatment report options. And typically it's, being able to choose what pieces of that report are included, and maybe some things we can turn off if we don't need them there on the report. Sometimes it'll be different options on what type of analysis or where ARM should pull certain information from. If you're not quite sure what some of these do, a couple of ways to kind of figure it out. The report preview is kind of nice to be able to just get an idea of what the report will look like. And then if I go back and change an option, I can real quickly preview and see what has changed. So here I can see I turned off that second table that had all of my product totals. I can say, oh wait, no, bring that back. Very easy to change that option again and just be able to see quickly that, okay, yeah, that's back. I do need that piece of information. There's also a help button in the corner of this report options. And that is useful. We have a report topic for pretty much every screen that you see in ARM. But I think it's really especially helpful for these report options when there's just a dozen of them in this list and you might not be totally sure what they do or what the purpose is. And so we just have a separate page for every report option section that you see there. And just every option on the screen has a listing. And there's an explanation of what happens if you turn this on, what happens if you turn it off, different things like that. Sometimes there'll be kind of a visualization to try to show what things, how it'll look like, depending on what you choose. This is also helpful kind of going in reverse. If you are curious if you can do something or if there's an ARM report that can do something for you, there is a search over here on the left within the help system. You might, depending on your options, it might start with the content or the index, but there is a search tab here where you could just type in a keyword. So real basic example is, I want to know, can ARM do a NOVA or something, which I guess we usually call AOV. So maybe I'll search for AOV, and then we will see all the different topics. Of course, I picked a very general one. We've got lots of topics that touch on that. So there's a whole host of different topics where I can discover where something related to AOV would be. Or maybe my map. How do I print a trial map? I could list topics for that. So just different ways to kind of find what you need all here in the ARM help. If you don't see a button that has the word help on it, a lot of times the keyboard shortcut would be just the F1 key. Will get you to the same thing. And again, very helpful for reporting, but that's a general tool for pretty much anything in ARM as well, as those help topics. So in addition to kind of this main section of options that we have, there is a button here for more options. So depending on the report, there may be other, even more options available to us. So here I've got my trial treatments, but there are a variety of different sections that are at the top. As you can see, we've got so many options. It's definitely helpful to have them organized a little bit for us here. I do want to point out that there are 3 of these here that start with the word global. And the idea of these global options is that these apply really to any and all of the reports that I'm generating. So in comparison, the first section we were on is very specific to the trial treatments component. But something like the general global options, for example, these apply for every component in my report list that I'm generating. There's also a page heading. So this is a nice look at the very top. Let me zoom in a little bit here. The very top introduction line, essentially in any report. How does that look? You can choose what components, the date, your trial ID, the name of the report that's generated, your page number, all those types of things you can control, both whether they print or not, and then also where on the page they display. So left, centered, or right. So again, this is going to fit with all of the reports that I generate. And the same thing for the footer, controlling the borders for the various sections on the report, things like that. So those are the global options. And to show that one more time, I've got the trial treatments. If I now move to the site description or the status report, of course, neither of those have a specific options page to them, but even so, in the more options section, we still have the global general, the global page heading. So these options apply for all of the reports. Let's find another report to add to this list. And somehow I found the couple that don't have options to them. Let's add the spray seeding plan as well, just to see the difference in the main report options section there. When you change your selection, the list of options are changing on us. So once we have made our selections, again, we can use that report preview to get a sense of if we're generating what we want or not. We can also preview kind of the final copy of the report. So this report preview doesn't generate everything necessarily. One example would be the the assessments. When I'm looking at the report preview, ARM only will go out to the first 5 assessment columns. Just to keep it simple, the idea with this preview is only to see one page, just to get an idea of the structure and what all is included on the report. And so we aren't going all the way through and generating everything we would need on the report until we move to the next step. So that we can do that, we can proceed by pressing the next button in the corner here. And then ARM will generate, in this case, all 4 of these reports together. Then depending on the options, some of the reports have some sort of interaction or wizard or tool that goes into setting up what's on the report. So this example came from the spray seeding plan, I believe, and it's just giving us information about our applications. Allows us to choose which applications we might want to include on the report. Might also get a list of messages, just information ARM wants to give us, or if something went wrong in the report generation or something like that. We get a list here. And in this case, just a warning, so nothing too critical, but worthwhile to at least read to know whether it's something I should look into further or not. And in this case, it's warning me that my mix size that I have entered myself in application A is different than what ARM calculated. As long as I know that, yeah, 3.25 is what I need to use, we can just proceed. We'll spend a little more time on this print screen a little later on, but I did just want to show that there is a preview button here. Similar to the last preview in the fact that we get to see the report on our screen, but in this case now we do actually get everything included. And for all, in our case, the 4 different reports that we wanted to generate, all of those components are put together. So this is kind of our final product, if you will, that we can look at on the screen before we actually send it to our printer or make a file out of it. So there's our treatment list. Then I get our site description information. And you can see the report just continues on with the next sections that we have. There's that status report, spreads onto 2 different pages. Then the spray seeding plan is the last 2 pages. So that's what it will look like in the end. Again, just all of those components put together as one. All right, I've got a button here for previous that just takes us back to the print reports dialog, where I could have closed it and did file print reports, get us right back to where we started. And one useful function, if I'm very happy with what I've generated here, I can save all of my selections. I can save this list of my components that I've chosen, as well as all of the options I have selected. That way I can consistently reproduce the report that I just generated. Because I might want to do the same type of report for every trial that I have. And so that consistency is important, and it sure would be nice to save myself time of not having to fiddle around with all of these options each and every time, trying to remember what I usually select. So ARM can remember all of our selections by using a report set. Part of the reason we have this box labeled as report set, to think of this list as the set of components that we selected, the set of options we've chosen. Let's put these all into a file that we can use again and again. So we have a button over here on the right to save this set. ARM will prompt us to save a file. It typically, our usual spot where whenever we're saving a personal list or creating some sort of file that ARM will use again, ends up being on our hard drive in this typical location, this GDM def location. And so my recommendation for naming the file is to basically be a reminder of what it is you're creating. What is this report? Or maybe the time of year, the purpose of what you would have to do. So my example, we kind of had an oddball list, but let's just roughly say it's our mid-season trial status, trying to get us as the trial is going, give us we wanted the treatments and what we filled in the site description. So it's our mid-season form. Whatever it is you would call that report is just kind of a handy thing to name your report set file, because the real value in this report set is in the future when you're wanting to use it again. And so if you name it something that will be a reminder to you later on of what it was you were doing, it's a lot easier to know, hey, this is the one I want. Technically, you could name it whatever you would like, but that's my recommendation, is have the name of the file be descriptive. Once I press save, you do have another option to be maybe even more verbose if you wish. I think this is kind of maybe a piece from a much older time with computers, when we were limited in file size, names, things like that, where we didn't have the flexibility in what you would name things. So we have this ability to type, a big sentence that roughly would describe what you want to do. It's really just another way to remind yourself what this report set is all about. I usually tend to end up leaving it blank because I gave myself enough of a reminder in the name, but it can be useful, especially if you find yourself making many sets. Or the other advantage to a report set is it doesn't have to be just for yourself. These files are really useful to share with a colleague who's also using ARM. So maybe everyone in your group is creating reports that have the same structure and the same set of options. That's really beneficial then, and being able to be more clear to other individuals, in addition to yourself, what the purpose of this report set is. That can be an advantage to, flushing this out a little more. So now that I have saved that, a couple of small changes on the screen. At the top now, this name comes here in our report set. So I can see that that is the set that I have currently selected. I also have in this list here, this list of available sets. I can see that that file I just created is right here. So this is very easy to toggle now back and forth into the different types of reports I might create. So you can see I've done a variety of previous report sets that are just on my computer. So I have this My Trial Summary. And when I click on it, the list of components has refreshed into a different selection. The options themselves might be different as well. We're really just reverting ARM to a previous time, essentially, of the selections I made to generate a report. And again, the benefit is that consistency of having the same template, the same options, the same statistical choices as far as the AOV goes, things like that. And it's just a simple click back and forth. If I go back to my mid-season form, I'm right back to where we were before. If you don't see what you're looking for, there is the option at the very top for more sets. So then I get a browsing dialog here. Another reason to utilize this would be when you select an item in the list, ARM can show that description that we created. If you don't quite remember what it's for, that's how you would see that description that we added. Another option for groups of ARM users, you don't have to save these all in this folder that's only on your computer. You could copy them out to your network drive or your group OneDrive or whatever, so that way all of the report sets everyone can access easily. So you could certainly browse to a different location to find the list of report sets that everyone picks from. Just a nice way to kind of standardize even across other ARM licenses. One final trick in the available sets, if you're thinking to yourself, hey, this is awesome, I just wish I knew this before when I was making reports last year. Boy, it sure would be nice to just go back to what I did last year instead of having to recreate it. We actually can do that with this previous sets button. So whether or not you were creating a report set, like we just showed, each time in ARM, when you generate a report, when you press the next button, ARM silently remembers the list of options that you had, essentially saving a report set just stashed away in this previous sets list, instead of having that formalized name that you've chosen where to save. So this is really handy if you want to, in a way, roll back to a previous time, but you didn't think to save a report set. So you can see I tend to generate a lot of reports. So I've got a very long list, but like we said, if I know that last year around this time, I was working on my, my final reports for the year, and I just wish that I would have that same selection. I can just go find the timestamp of, oh, yep, that was about the time of year I was trying to run my statistics. I can see the different reports that I had involved in that printout. And only if I named it would it remember that I even had that name there. And it's empty because I wasn't using a report set, but that's not a problem at all. Because what we have here, again, these aren't reports themselves, they're just the options. So it's just remembering what options I had selected at this time when I generated the report. So if I click OK, then that's treated just as if I had given that a name and created a whole set itself. I have the list of reports and the options I chose loaded right here for me now. So one more time, that was just the previous sets option here in this list of the available sets. And just depending on how long ARM has been on your one computer and how many reports you generate, you may have a lot, like I do, or you might not have very many. But just a helpful way to roll back if you didn't, to a time you didn't know about report sets. All right. Yeah, any questions so far? I've been going fast between the reports we have, and then also saving your selections you're making on this dialog. All right, a few minutes left. Have just a couple of other things we can show here. I'll go back to our mid-season form that we created today, and we'll go next so we can return to that print dialog. So kind of the last phase here, we've made our selection of components to bring together. We've made sure all of our options are configured the way we want. We've taken a look at the report to know we're getting really what we want to generate. This print screen gives us kind of a last collection of options on how we're assembling this report. So things like your printer selection, the orientation of your pages, how they're ordered and numbered, things like that are all here. One useful one I just want to point out, when you have a report that has several different components, like we do in this case, where I had the 4 different options, we have an option to choose whether we have a page break in between each of those sections or we don't. So last time when we previewed our report, this option was turned on. So just to compare, I'm going to go back to preview with this option off. So by default, we'll have a page break after each report component that we have. So in this case, I've got my trial treatments was first, and we have our list of treatments, and then we just have a page break. And we don't start the site description, our second component, until the next page. Well, sometimes that's just fine. It gives us a nice structure to our report. And then as soon as the site description is done, then we start the status report on a new page. Other times, though, that can be maybe a little wasteful. Look how much space we have on this page here. Is there any reason to have all that blank space? Or couldn't we just move up this content onto the previous page and squish things together a little closer? If that is your desire, that option here to remove a page break turns off that separation. And if there is at least 20% of the page that's just empty at the bottom of a page, well, let's just start the next report component right here. So just to preview that quick again, we'll see that kind of squished effect like we had last time. That trial treatment only goes halfway down the page. So let's then start the site description component. And we just happen to kind of fall at the very end of the site description here, so we didn't really necessarily gain anything starting on this last one. And I think we have all that blank space only because the status report kind of extends to a second page. So we'd otherwise kind of get lost in putting too much together all in one. So that's a way to condense down your report, or the other direction, if you're finding it a little too condensed and you want to get a little more blank space, turning that option off will do that. Down below here, so in addition to just printing our report, sending it to whatever printer that we have, which ARM will just use your default printer that's specified in Windows. If you don't otherwise make a selection in the print setup, you'll just use whatever your default printer is. You can also generate a file instead of sending the report just to your printer. So there's a few different output types here. I've actually got just a quick rundown of the three kind of common ones you may create. So the first one is a spreadsheet, most commonly Excel. Really with that option, all of the content on the page gets moved around a little bit because we're trying to fit into columns of a spreadsheet. So you end up with kind of losing the spacing and the formatting that you have on at least a lot of the different reports, just because of that shift. But it is really helpful if the content of your report, you might want to process that information. So something like the assessment data summary has all of your data points and a mean. That might be handy to have in Excel, where I could then create a graph. And it's easier for me to select the data that I might want to graph or do some other analysis with. So you may want to generate a report out to a spreadsheet for something like that. The word processor, again, usually Microsoft Word is the most common one there. That one does a pretty good job of fitting what you see in the preview to Word. Every so often there's a small quirk. If the margins in Word are just a little bit different, or sometimes certain table structures are just a little bit different, things like that, you can see some quirks. But in general, it certainly is closer to what you would see in the preview as opposed to that spreadsheet, bringing it into a Word document. But the primary reason people would use Word is that report content that you're creating. Maybe you have further edits you're going to make to it. Or maybe you've got a Word document kind of master report that you're putting together in Word. It's a great way to copy and paste into your big template, or other information that's got your company letterhead or whatever on it. Word is that nice balance of being able to edit or pull together some of the information from your report content into something else as well. Then last but not least in that list is a PDF. So that one is really great for matching the format. It almost always matches just perfectly to the preview. The PDF does. The drawback is there's just less options for editing. Certainly, if you have an Adobe product that can manipulate a PDF, there is some that you can do, but definitely a little more limited. But if that report is your final product, there's nothing else really I need to do. I really like what ARM provides me. That PDF is kind of the best way to go then. It's ready to hand off to somebody. So those are the main output types here. Again, that's in the corner here. The different buttons will then generate this report that we have to one of those file types. This fourth option, there's some kind of strange formats here tucked away in this file. Honestly, I don't know how many of these would be particularly useful. Some of them, like the worksheet and the RTF, those match Excel and Word anyway. So it's kind of two different ways to get to the same thing. But that's the fourth option there. Much less common. All right, well, that would be our print options here on just sending these out, your reports. Real quick, since we have a couple of minutes, I guess first want to open the floor up for any questions again on anything that we've shown so far. If not, I'll just use the last 2 minutes here to point out just a couple of options. Yeah, they're just common ones to point out that can be useful. We talked about the global options. There's a shortcut button here to view just those global options. And one option here at the very top is related to your treatments. By default, of course, all of the treatments in your study are included on the report, but you do have the ability to print selected instead. One reason, actually, by selecting treatments, you can change the order of them if you needed to for some reason. The order that you select them ends up being the order on the report. Or maybe, thinking of maybe your analysis. We have an untreated check in this trial. It's useful for calculating our efficacy, but we're not trying to make any claims of our product versus doing nothing. So I don't want it in the analysis. Something like that. You could leave out a treatment entirely from the reports that you're generating. So that's another reason you would maybe want to select which treatments. Similar idea if you're using one of these summary reports. There is a section called General Summary. And so similar idea, but more related to the assessment columns that you have. So you can choose which assessment columns you want on the report. And automatic will ARM will choose for you. It'll essentially just pick anything that has data in it. Let's bring in the report, because if we're doing an analysis, we'll bring those with, but you can do the same selection here as well. And again, you can change the order if you need to. So that is the columns themselves, which assessments do I want to report on? Within the assessment, you can also choose your header rows. So just what description did I fill in? Same thing. ARM can choose based on what's filled in or not, or I can manually choose to do that. When I have that, the selection comes when I press next. After doing that, oh, I didn't include a summary report. Let's just generate the assessment data summary. So we'll actually have that prompting. So it'll load up the editor here so I can make a selection. At first it's asking which columns, so I can just choose on the screen whatever order and whichever ones I want to include. Same idea here in the header. I can choose which rows, so I can shorten up and only do the ones I care about. I can also change the order then if I want them in a non-standard order. And just real quick to see that preview, you can see my header is very short. It's only the ones I clicked on, and the columns are changed too. So, all right. Well, that is a wrap on our reporting. Thanks all for your time. As I said, next week we will be in the report section again, but talking statistics, doing the ANOVA analysis. And so hopefully maybe we'll see you then. Thanks again for your time.